We wanted to find out what some of our peers thought.
So we asked a few PHS students. Well, here's our house. Everything around us is on fire. Man, this is bad. I know can't really see very well. Oh, man, this is bad. There goes our house. It's all engulfed now. Well, don't know what to say. Just thought I would video this in case the last time some of you guys see me.
For my entire life, whenever someone asked me where I was from, and I would respond, "Oh, I'm from Paradise," they would always look at me kinda weird. They're never really quite sure what to do with that answer. So they'd say something like, "No, really?" And I'd say, "Yeah, no, really. It's a town. It's called Paradise." And they'd laugh and tell me they thought I was joking, and I'd smile that same polite smile that we all have when you're in a conversation you've had 1,000 times before. And the follow-up question would always be, without fail, "Well, is it really paradise?"
Around this area, and right here, because none of the trees are around, but don't go any further, okay? Because
This is the Rauscher family. Parents, Richie and Savannah, kids, Annalise and Richard. On November 8th, 2018, the campfire took their entire home and everything in it. For the kids, this is their first time visiting their property since the fire.
What do you think?
it's still there.
Yeah.
Just put a net.
Yeah, just put a net in it.
Yeah.
And clean it off a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little rusty. Maybe paint it red.
Nah, leave the paint. Just put a new net on.
Am I allowed to touch it or?
I wouldn't touch it.
Yeah.
Not without gloves on. There's something else I want to show you. Oh. Yeah, stay there. Hey, bud. All three of our face cages.
Wait, what's my hockey bag?
Dude, your hockey bag did not survive. Did you want to try and move some of the roof to look for the ring?
The Rauschers are here today, hoping to find Savannah's wedding ring, buried somewhere in the twisted metal and mucky ash that was once their family home.
Watch for nails. Maybe. What was this? Do you know?
No, it's like so weird. There's so much stuff that I don't know what the hell it is. Like,
It could be stuff that was part of like the attic's construction. So
I was like, oh my gosh, this ring set is the most beautiful ring set I've ever seen. I just love it. It was like from the 1930s, and it was really very like vintage, just beautiful. And then Richie went back, and the jeweler remembered that I liked this ring, and so Richie was like able to get me literally the exact ring that I wanted without me knowing. Or
you guys come here, check this out down here. Check out our new view.
Is this where the fire came up?
Yeah, it came up from this way.
Yeah, wait. Wait, where's Comcast? Is it like...
It's way in that direction.
Yeah, away.
Watch your step.
what is this? Oh, this is part of Richie's computer. Yeah. It's got like, there's like some kind of circuits.
It's been an ongoing, is very ongoing. Like every day you hear about somebody moving. You think of something that you left behind that was sentimental to you. Some days you feel so happy and grateful, and then other days you feel like you can't stop crying. It's like mourning a death. I've lost someone very close to me in my life, and it was very similar to that kind of grief. It was like very much that level of heartbreak to lose Paradise.
It's video, you can move.
It's Christmas Eve, and I'm in Aptos, and we're celebrating Christmas here at a home we rented. It's near the beach. We've never done this before.
Do you want to film me screaming at my kid to get in here for dinner? It's about to happen.
Get in here!
Hi, Clayton.
You should probably get his name right if you're gonna.
I know.
If you're gonna make a real run at Clay Thompson.
Clay Thompson. Thompson. I thought it was Thomas.
No, it's Thompson. Clayton Thomas is not.
That is who I thought I was talking to online. Clay Thompson. Thompson. We should have rehearsed. Honey, how many more people need to serve?
Good luck, Ron.
I don't know.
So our family tradition has been, at least for the last 27 years that I can count, is that everyone comes to my home for Christmas. But it was obvious then that we weren't going to have Christmas in Paradise, which is hard because that's sort of just part of the family fabric. And you know, when you're facing change, you think, well, it's never going to be the same. That's not the way we do it. And it's turned out to really be very lovely. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's bittersweet because we miss the Paradise Christmas, but this is a beautiful place too. And hopefully in another year or 2 or 3, we'll be celebrating Christmas in Paradise again.
Despite the historically destructive fire just 6 weeks earlier, there was a version of Christmas in Paradise. The annual ice skating rink was built, and many traveled a great distance for the small taste of familiarity. For many of these suddenly homeless people, this was their first time visiting the town they love since it was almost completely destroyed.
Thank you for coming, and what a great time to be here. It's so fun to see people, and I don't know, I don't shake hands much anymore. It seems like we hug each other more than anything else. You know what I'm saying? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
While it may seem like a simple event from an outside perspective, even something as inauspicious as a community Christmas tree lighting feels like a tremendous victory for these residents. For the people of Paradise, like the Rauschers and Susan Davis, chaos and uncertainty are now the defining characteristics of every single day, in the span of a few short hours on a day seemingly like any other. Their homes, gone. Their things, gone. Their jobs, gone. Their entire sense of community and history and even reality itself, gone. What would you do? How do you replace paradise? People are drawn to live in paradise for a great many reasons. For Susan, it was an opportunity for her and her husband to move their young family from the Bay Area to a smaller, safer community. A great place to raise kids and someday retire. In 1991, they did just that. Her daughter, 11 years old at the time, wasn't particularly thrilled at the prospect of leaving all of her friends behind and starting over, but her son, who had just turned 7, was excited. Like, super excited. And I can tell you that with confidence, because that handsome little second grader was me. I'm Susan's son. My name is Ev Duran. I made this movie. Hi. And it's true, I can always remember loving Paradise. My earliest memories of the town are visiting my uncle and aunt and cousins in the 80s and being completely transfixed by how green everything was, how many trees there were, how the roads were also hilly. I thought driving through Paradise was like being on a roller coaster. To a little kid from San Jose, Paradise seemed like a faraway magical town in the forest. We first lived in a rental on Lower Sawmill until my parents bought our house on Starlight Court off of Neal Road. We lived there for 7 years and I loved that place. I made a lot of really good kung fu movies with my friends in the garage. When my parents divorced, my mother and I moved into a home she bought on Sesame Street. Yes, Sesame Street.
It's just the kitchen.
It's a small street off of Dean Road on Upper Pence. It's where my mother has lived since. I attended Paradise Elementary School, Paradise Intermediate School, and in 2002 I graduated from Paradise High School.
Senior pranks! Have they gone too far?
Paradise was a wonderful place to grow up. I loved weekend visits to All the Best Video, or summer days spent swimming at local river spots or being dragged behind a boat at Lake Oroville.
Oh, shit!
I loved riding my bike with my friends to Hooch Hut for candies and sodas, or hanging out at the duck pond, or at the hot trails, or at the Safeway parking lot. I loved going to Paradise High School football games and feeling the unmatched energy of an entire town at my back. I just loved it all, and although some of my particular affections for the town might just be specific to me, the general sentiment of loving Paradise is almost universal. Trust me, I've talked to a lot of people. But for those of you watching who aren't from Paradise, you probably won't know any of these things. You might not even know where Paradise is.
I knew nothing about Paradise. As a matter of fact, I had to look it up on a map.
We'll get back to him though, he's a good guy. Here's a little background on the town of Paradise, just the basics that you need to know. To tell you about them, I'm going to turn you over to Mark Thorpe, the executive director of the Gold Nugget Museum, the town's primary historical archive. Mark, in true small-town Paradise fashion, also happens to be my cousin. Here he is in 1987 helping me put my shoes on, and here he is today.
Paradise being in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada Mountains, a town of 27,000 people, which grows at about 3% per year. Cooler by about 5 degrees from the valley floor, close enough to a lot of international activity associated with the Chico State Campus, a university town of Chico. But still just 10 miles away where you could come back up to the community and again seeking out the quiet, kind of slower paced life.
I love Paradise because it's a beautiful area. You are close to any river you'd like to go to. You're close to the mountains, you're close to the valley. There's a lot of history in this area, and I kind of like researching the history and being able to go explore these places.
Jason's right. There is a ton of history in this area. I'm actually ashamed to admit that I didn't know that much about it, at least not until I started making this film. Guys like Donald Criswell helped set me straight.
I think this was a little known, little explored area until John Bidwell came here. He led the first wagon train into California. Paradise still was the outback. It was on the way to Butte Meadows and Colby Meadows, where the cattle pastured in the spring and the summer months, and then they were brought back down into the valley in the fall by ranchers like Clark and Neal and Pence. Paradise was kind of on the way. And then the gold rush hit.
In 1859, a 54-pound gold nugget, the largest ever found, was discovered in the rivers surrounding Paradise, making the town a popular place.
There were still mines when I was a kid that were being worked in Paradise, actually, down off of Billy Road, and Lucky John mine, for example. But it was such a beautiful place to be. The climate certainly is like the best in the world, or right up there with it. And turns out you can roll up a newspaper and stick it in the ground in Paradise and it will grow. I mean, it's a great fertile agricultural place.
Orchards sprung up all across Paradise, and the area was soon populated by ranchers and farmers.
Among one of those first early ranchers was this gentleman who came up what's now Neal Road. I live right off of Neal Road. And as I arrived into town, it gets to be 100 degrees in Paradise sometimes. He apparently plopped down under a tree and said, "Boys, this is Paradise." And that's the version that I believe is probably most accurate. The other one was the old mining thing, the Paro dice, you know, that 2 dice that you roll on the table. Yeah, I don't know.
No matter how the town got its name, the name stuck. It felt appropriate. As Paradise evolved into and throughout the 20th century, it became an appealing place to raise a family for people from all walks of life.
I'm Dorothy Fallon. This is my husband, Don Fallon. We moved to Paradise in 1962. We lived in Chico, and we used to go up to Paradise so we could bowl on their 4-lane bowling alley on Skyway. And they had a nice drive-in theater back then that we really enjoyed, so we spent a lot of time going to Paradise. And when the kids got old enough for school, we moved up there. And Don, his parents followed construction. He didn't want his kids to be moved from school to school. So he always said when they started school, we was gonna stay in one place. So he says, we can starve to death in Paradise as well as anywhere else. That's where we're staying. When we moved there was 9,000 people. There was
On the whole ridge?
On the whole ridge. There was 2 4-way stop signs, one at Pearson and Clark and one at Elliott and Skyway, wasn't it? There was no stoplights or anything like that. And it's changed a lot.
Even as Paradise changed and grew, it never lost that small town spirit that so many of its residents loved.
You have groups of families that have been born and raised here over generation. So even though you may not know the person next to you, your grandparents may be friends with their grandparents, which automatically connects you.
From a demographic standpoint, I think a lot of people equated it to a retirement community. I don't know that that's a fully accurate description. It was a vibrant town. There were lots of people there from different generations and different walks of life. But all in all, a great small town American community and filled with some really great people.
You could go down the road and wave at people because it was small enough that you'd see out of, say, 5 or 6 cars, you'd at least know 1 or 2 of the people.
You could walk down the road and people would smile and wave to you instead of, looking at you like this and putting their head down.
It was beautiful. The trees, it was a forest. It was a very close-knit, small town. So just the fact that everybody knew everybody was friendly, I just fell in love with it.
We would tell people even on trips or when we lived on the East Coast, we would describe it as this really pretty, super clean. We'd always say the tap water tastes like bottled water. It's this really no litter, just the cleanest air, very nice people, but a little bit remote. But I liked how free it felt. That was a big thing. Is we would always tell people, we live on this road and there's horses going by and we have a bear that knocks our trash can over every night and people's chickens come into our yard and things like that.
But the beauty was in the trees and in the hills. We had the canyon, like was on one side was the Feather River. The other side we had the Butte Creek Canyon. So that's the reason why we call it the Ridge.
Beautiful and amazing. Wonderful place to grow up. I always told people that you had a lake below you, lakes above you, a canyon on both sides with rivers, like a childhood dream. You could go hunting up in the mountains, and then Chico was 8 miles away, so you could get some city life if you wanted.
And it was a place where your kids They'd get up in the morning, they'd get on their bicycles, they'd run down to Kunkel Lake, fish all day, you know, run around town, come home. You didn't worry about anything happening to them, you know. You knew they'd be home in time for dinner.
What were some things, pre-fire obviously, either landmarks or businesses or just like Paradise things that you guys really liked?
Oh, wow. Well, right off the bat,
Juice and
Java. Yeah.
Yeah.
Juice and Java.
Of course, Juice and Java.
I went to that coffee shop for literally, gosh, 20 years.
We grew up going to Juice and Java in high school,
And now
skipping
we're able
class to go to Juice
take our
and Java.
daughter there to get a smoothie.
For many people in Paradise, Juice and Java was an institution. Delicious coffee, tons of seating, stellar, personalized service, J&J was a favorite of Paradisians of all ages. The owner is a man named Jeffrey Greitzer, and I've known him for what feels like forever. My older sister used to work at Juice and Java when I was a kid, and Jeffrey would sometimes come to our family birthday parties. Here's a picture of he and I at my mom's 40th in 1997. I'm dressed as a clown for some reason? When I got older, I worked at Juice and Java for 5 years. It's probably my most favorite job I've ever had. Jeffrey is a character through and through, and never boring. I'll let one of my former coworkers explain a bit further.
Oh, Jeffrey. You know, when I sat down for my interview, which was on the spot, I was not expecting it, but I walked in and he sat me down and interviewed me, was not prepared for it at all. My now mother-in-law was in the car waiting for me, and so I'm like, can I go tell my ride that like I'm going in for an interview, you know? But during the interview, one thing that always stuck with me is he looks at me and he says, I'm a Gemini and I'm a childish asshole. And I was like, who says that during an interview? And he definitely could be, which I'm okay saying. He said it himself, so I'm just not arguing with him. But he also, Jeffrey has a huge heart.
And I can vouch for that. Jeffrey once reached into the cash register and just gave me $900 to buy a truck, like out of the blue.
I think when you can work anywhere and you kind of feel like it's a family, that's not something that everybody gets. And for Jeffrey, I think that that was really big for him, is to be able to support each other.
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Greitzer, owner of Juice and Java. I've been here 23 years. I've been Paradise 24 and built this restaurant 23 years ago, and this is what it looks like now. It's lost everything. We lost 2 businesses with this building and our house, and a lot of great memories. When this fire came down, I heard a lot of comments from ex-employees on how much they miss this place and how much it meant to them. It was a pretty tight group. It wasn't just, hey, I'm going to work, you know, the boss is an asshole, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure there was plenty of that, but there was, God, the memories and God, the different, some of the things, going bowling together, getting a limo with all the employees and going out for a Christmas dinner, and employees projectile vomiting at nice restaurants and things like that. Oh yeah. I wanted to create like a Cheers type of atmosphere where people would know everybody, and that definitely came to fruition. I mean, it's great to feel that close to the community, and it's, you know, it's quite an honor to have that opportunity.
If it's not obvious from the look on Jeffrey's face, Juice and Java shared a special connection with the town of Paradise. Many customers would visit every single day of the week. And then when Friday rolled around and the sun began to set, there was something else very important to the people of Paradise.
It's a football crazy town, obviously. It's interesting with football because when I first got up there in the mid-90s, they were not good. But people still came to games. And then Rick came along and they started to win.
I don't know the win-loss record, but we've been, in 20 years, we've been in the section championship 12 times. We've won it 6 times. We've been in the playoffs 18 years out of the 20, and we've won 10 league championships.
And then it became something you had to be part of the football team. It wasn't quite Texas football, but it was. There was a happening, right?
Football was really, at least for my boy, it was the reason he went to school. It was the reason he got grades that were good enough to stay on the football team. It was really important to him.
This whole town seems like they're so involved. It's almost like a movie that you would see that it's Friday night, Friday Night Lights, the whole town comes out.
Those 4 seconds that we get in between whistles, we were going to get after people. And we created a reputation that, heard all kinds of rumors and, oh, they're doing this up there, they're doing that. No, we had a passion for the game.
Whenever I thought of Paradise, and now especially, I think it's a football town. So how I describe it, football is really important. And it's important to me, and it's important to the community and to our high school.
The culture was so great, what Coach Prinz built there, and it continues. To be able to just sustain that for that many years and have kids continually coming through the program and bought in is something that's really special.
So that's Paradise in a nutshell. A pretty wonderful place to grow up. Not perfect by any stretch. Like every town, we had our problems, but by and large, it was just a good place. A tight-knit town with a strong sense of community. The kind of small town where high school football was king, or a local coffee shop could feel like the center of the universe. It was our own personal hideaway in the woods, and I'd wager to say that most of the residents of Paradise felt connected to one another, a part of a larger whole. It was beautiful. It was safe. It was home. There was only one real omnipresent threat to Paradise. But you know that. That's why we're here.
Oh, we always knew there was going to be a big one.
During my tenure in Paradise, I've probably had to evacuate at least 4 times that I'm sure of.
We knew we lived in a fire-prone area. I don't think the fear consumed us, but we were always aware of it. There were always fires nearby.
In my experience, there was always fires around. Nothing ever got close. I kind of thought of Paradise to be like a safe haven from all natural disasters. That's truly how I looked at it. Like no earthquakes, no floods, no fire's gonna burn the whole town.
When you have what's called the wildland-urban interface, which is basically building your homes in the forest, there is a lot of risk.
We know the situation that we're in here has always been a potential major wildland fire. I always said, and many people would quote me as saying, "Oh, Chief, you always said it's not a matter of if, it's when."
It's not if, but when.
It wasn't if, it was when. We all knew that it was imminent. There had been threats, and if you look at it over an overlay over the last 150 years, you'll notice that there have been several fires that have encroached upon the plateau, which we are, between large canyons that generate large winds.
I frankly think I was a little too blasé about it, like, oh, it's not going to happen to us, despite having been here in 2008.
In 2008, the Humboldt Fire, started by an arsonist, wreaked tremendous havoc on Paradise. That fire destroyed 87 homes, 167 outbuildings, and over 100 vehicles. For those of us who lived in Paradise at the time, it was a truly frightening event. When it was over, I can remember thinking, man, I hope that was the big one they've always talked about.
We were evacuated in 2008. We were evacuated for about a week, and I think everyone's awareness of fire was really heightened that season.
2008 was a lot of ways I called it a close call. Even though I'm sure the 74 people who lost their homes in the lower Paradise area don't feel like it was a close call. From the standpoint of what the potential was, it was a close call.
I know, where we go?
The impact of that fire was maybe an eye-opener for a lot of people.
That, I think, was my first real experience with, oh my gosh, like we live on a mountain and we're kind of stuck here type of thing, where I had not necessarily a fear, but an enlightening moment, I suppose.
2008 was very scary, and that's a time that many people evacuated, including us. In that particular instance, I think we were away from home for several nights before the fire was eventually contained.
In 2008, and I mean every square inch of this ranch and the 27,000 acres around it burned. If it wasn't rock or metal, it was ash. 10 years later, this place burned again.
Normal day, about 6:30 in the morning, I went out the front door and there was a flume of smoke coming in that corner over there. And, you know, being here in Paradise, you're used to having fires. And so that was a fire, but it didn't look like it was that ominous, like the entire town was going to be wiped off the map.
So I was up probably by about 6:45. I'd made coffee, sitting in my favorite chair and sipping my coffee and just sort of looking back over my shoulder out through the windows toward the backyard and seeing it was so smoky.
It started out as a normal day. I have 2 morning classes. The first one starts at 5 a.m. So got here, opened up the gym, do our workout. 6 a.m. another class comes in. By the time they're done, I walk them out. It's about 7:15. Nice sunny day, and we see a big cloud of smoke over there. Because we're kind of immune to it, we're like, oh, wonder where the fire's at, but that was about it.
About 7:30, I heard there was a fire in the canyon, but didn't even think twice about that because there's always a fire in the canyon.
I'd gotten a text message about 7:30 from the town manager. It was something they'd passed on from CAL FIRE that there was a fire at Polga. They were watching it and, you know, they were hitting it with everything they had.
I was listening to KCHO as I do every morning, and they said there's a fire in Polga, which wasn't particularly alarming because that's so far away.
The perspective was basically, we're just going to do this again. And that in fact, there are warnings that are coming out. There are people, neighbors coming by expressing concern. You know, the fire's over in Polga, that's a distance away. We've seen this before in different locations and treated it just like that.
My son said, Mommy, I thought it was supposed to be sunny today. And I said, it is. He said, but the sun's a weird color. And I walked out and I said, I wonder if there's a fire. And I smelled the air and it was a little smoky. And we get so many fires in Northern California that I really wasn't that worried about it. Fires all the way up in Shasta will sometimes make the sun hazy or whatever.
It seemed pretty relaxed. I was a little scared that there's a bunch of smoke, but nothing like out of the normal. I didn't feel scared in any way.
Me and my girlfriend woke up that morning and we went outside and just heard the wind going through the canyon like a freight train. I turned to her and I said, this isn't good. This scares me.
I was at home when I first learned of a fire, wildfire up in the Polga area. And initially it didn't cause me a lot of concern because that's a fairly remote part of the county. It's not heavily populated. But I did think to myself, I can't believe that it's November and we're having a wildfire.
The dynamics of this fire are really unique. Picture this, a fire is burning to the east of Paradise. It's burning in an area that has a significant fire history, the Concow area, Yankee Hill, Concow area. This fire had occurred from the same location and burned in one night. It burned 5 miles back in 2008 to the edge of Paradise. There's a history of fire moving quickly. Part of the dilemma of this fire was the fact that most of those fields had burned 10 years ago and were in a 10-year sort of ripe condition, because when a forest goes away, it's replaced by lighter fuels. So the regrowth that occurred over the last 10 years created a lot of fuel load. So now this fuel load's on fire. And what happens with the fuel load is that it was very dry, record-setting levels for the month of November, ready to burn under a heavy wind condition, not just a Jarbo Gap wind, which we locals know is a nightly occurrence in summer, but also a huge gradient wind that was from a high pressure to low pressure that created a much higher stack of wind. That comes into play in that when the fire developed in this really dry fuel, it sends up a column. In this case, that it went up with all that energy and it hit somewhere around, I'm going to say about the 5,000 foot level, it hit shearing winds that would probably exceeded 100 miles an hour. Not the surface winds that were being measured at 42 to 45 on Jarbo Gap, but over 100 mile an hour winds. So this superheated air full of debris is sheared off and launches thousands of embers in a blowtorch that keeps them hot. Because typically what happens with embers is that you'll get some ember fallout, and that ember fallout will ignite fires. But as the air rises like a thunderstorm, the fuels have an opportunity to cool. And as they come back down, not near as many of them are hot embers. Well, in this case, they were in the middle of a blowtorch being launched by these above surface winds right at the town of Paradise. We also knew, because we have an elaborate evacuation plan, had and still have, that we had potential problems getting people out because of the sheer number of people versus the number of road options that we had.
Concow, Magalia, and Paradise, you're talking about maybe 60,000 people. That's a lot of people to get out. And Paradise isn't really built for a mass evacuation at this very same time, which is why they developed their plan. This is why they did that, because they learned in 2008. If you get everybody out, it's going to be a mess. And it was.
There were a couple of young men running through the nearby property, and they were yelling, "Fire, fire, get out." So I yelled back, "How close is it?" And they said, "We can see the flames."
You started to see cars kind of backing up on Skyway or whatever, and I was getting annoyed. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, why are we already backed up on this road? So I had to go up on the sidewalk to drive to get to my house, which is like, I don't know, 5 minutes from here.
My daughter Brielle was born the morning before, on the 7th, at 8:18, November 7th. So we were in the hospital, and because I had to have a C-section, I was hooked up to an IV, I was hooked up to a catheter. I'd only gotten out of bed once in the previous 24 hours.
Then I heard it was at Ponderosa School at about 8:45, and I'm like, uh-oh, this is different.
My 24-hour-old baby and I were escorted outside. We were put into the back of a sheriff's vehicle, and so I look over and you could just see the flames coming over the canyon towards the hospital.
And we could hear like the fire, we could hear people screaming, we could hear propane tanks exploding. So I took one last picture of the house from over here right before we got in the car, and because it dawned on me it would be the last time. That we'd see it.
So if the fire was coming from the canyon, it should have moved progressively. Well, it leapfrogged and was into town very quickly.
So I threw some clothes on over my pajamas and got the dog, and I grabbed an Afghan of my mom's, and I pulled out, and I could see in a distance that there was a police car, and I thought, I'm gonna go check with him to see how much time we have. Like an hour? He says, "You have no time. You have to get out."
Holy shit, dude. Just be safe. Fly, fly, fly. Fly, dude. Holy shit. Holy shit. Okay. Holy shit.
So it's just a mad panic to get out. You had flames on your left and your right, and you see houses and trees, and you can feel the heat coming through the car.
It's so hot. It's so hot. Keep going.
It sounds like the whole world was avalanching toward us. It was the craziest sound I'd ever heard. It sounded like Armageddon, exactly like I would picture Armageddon.
It's getting darker and darker to a point where it's now like black, and you see the white ash coming down. You're hearing more and more of that popping. People are all stuck. People are freaking out.
This is Penn's Road. Oh, this is Penn's.
And I remember specifically one transmission from a deputy talking about how the road was blocked, they were being overtaken by fire, they were going to have to get out of their vehicles and find a way to shelter in place. I honestly believe that that was the last time I would ever hear that deputy.
You know, the correct side to go down Skyway is you get past Neal and then you start your descent. And you can see the canyon, that's where the canyon starts. You can see the flames start to roll, and people are just, you know, trying to, like cattle going to slaughter. I'm like, I don't think I want to get into that lane. So I decided to go around a couple of cars and go to the opposite way, because I know there was 2 lanes coming up and emergency vehicles could still make it up. So I scooted around and went that way. I drove around. There was a little building, maybe 200 yards. Everything was clear, and then everything changed. Everything got dark. I mean, completely black. I mean, darker than night. And then you see trees on both sides of the road just on fire, and things flying over the roads, and you're looking everywhere. And all of a sudden, you're just surrounded by fire. You're like, well, wait a minute. I was just. Oops, I made a wrong turn. That's what it felt like. And so you have to keep driving, you can't get out. So I start to drive through the fire, and you're kind of doing this, and you're looking, because you're like, wow, you're starting to, the light bulbs starting to come on. You're going, oh, wait a minute, this is dangerous. And so I get around this little building, and there's an opening from this side of the canyon to this side. Whoom, there comes a tunnel of fire, and it engulfs my car. So it's hitting. You can see it on the hood, the windshield. Behind you, I'm in a tunnel of fire. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, crap! I'm dead. I'm going to die here. Just keep driving, and it's getting hotter. And then now you're getting pelted by embers that are the size of bricks. And you can hear it going, and your car's going slowing down. And I'm thinking, oh please, my tires don't pop, don't pop, don't pop. And then the other things come up where you're starting to say, well, I hope the smoke takes me first before I die. And I'm thinking, shit, I don't want to get out and run this thing. It's going to hurt. You know, I don't want to stop. And so, and when that fire came and hit my windshield, your natural reaction is to duck, because so I ducked. As I ducked under, I got this, you know, like tiger came out at me, and all I could think about was my son. And I yelled out, Charlie, I'm not going to die here. I set up, put it in 3rd gear, punched it, and you know, I don't care what I hit. I had to get out of the fire because it was starting to get hot. You know, so it just kept going and going and going, and you know, probably another 60, 70 yards just before the Paradise Flying was all in Blythe, that one. I come out just a little bit past it, actually, not before, and it's open. You know, it's clear, it's open. I think, yeah! But to come out of that fire and to yell like a banshee, it's like, oh, I made it, you know. And for a while there, even though it wasn't, you know, it was just less than a minute, it felt like an eternity, because pretty sure I was going to die. I mean, yeah.
My mom left to go get my brother and sister-in-law's dogs, and she forgot her phone. So it was like, I don't know, 4.5 hours of just like not knowing where she was, and just hearing that people are dying on Edgewood.
I want to say it was like this driveway here. We were stopped and we had a clear view up it, and we're just sitting here waiting for the cars to one by one merge onto Pearson. And it was like midnight. It was so dark.
We finally made it up the road to right in front of the Lutheran daycare in time to watch that ignite. And we sat there and watched it burn to the ground with the little girl I had just picked up from there. Sat there and watched her school burn to the ground. At that same time, while I'm sitting there in traffic with my 2 little girls, I had she was a lady, probably mid-40s or so, came running down the middle of Pence Road by my truck, screaming, "There's people on fire back there, there's people on fire back there, somebody help them, there's people on fire."
I was wondering how we were going to make it out and how fast the fire would come and if we would have to get out on foot.
I'm not dying right here!
There was a mobile home park over here that was fully engulfed, and watched that burn. And then we watched this side of the road start also, and we just kind of watched it creep through these houses and these yards, getting closer and closer and closer. Meanwhile, we're not able to go anywhere, and we're just sitting there in the truck, kind of wondering if we were going to be able to get out.
You never want to, as a parent, look at your kids and go, I don't know how to save you right now. Like, I don't, like, and all I could think of as the fire was getting closer and was getting hotter and the car started overheating. And I kept thinking, like, I'm gonna watch my kids choke and burn to death in front of me, and I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what to do.
I sat there for, had to be 45 minutes while the world was burning down around us. And I had to think to myself, am I really gonna sit here and watch my girls burn to death? And that kind of got me moving. And I wasn't gonna sit there and I wasn't gonna let that happen. So I pulled off into a little side road where I wasn't gonna block anyone in. And I got the girls out of the truck and I just said, "Come on girls, we're going on a field trip." And you know, they're scared out of their minds, but I tried to make it as relaxed and fun as I could while I'm panicking inside. And we just walked up the road and kind of ran for a ways. And we finally caught up to where my uncle was in my grandpa's classic truck. And he was, 20 cars ahead of us or so. And I turned to him and I just said, "I'm getting my girls out of here. If fire gets any closer, you get out of here too. I love you." And we took off. And I had to go up to my dad, who was ahead of all of them, and tell him, "Dad, I love you. I'm getting the girls out of here." And he said, "You're doing the right thing."
And my son just said, "There's the fire." And we looked, and you could just see, like, over the crest of that hill, it was just bright. And then you'd see, like, the flames kind of coming up one by one. And then after a moment, just full on flames.
So we almost had to jump out of the car. But if we did, we'd probably burn up because the fire was right there, like super close, and it was moving very fast.
Richie, started saying, "Why aren't we using this other lane? Like, there's nobody's coming back. You're an idiot if you're coming back at this point. Like, you got, no one should be coming back to their houses." And we look over and the fire was gonna catch all the leaves and branches and bushes on the right next to us, and then the car was gonna catch on fire. And so Richie said, "Fuck this, we're not gonna die right here. We're not doing this." And he said it only takes one person, and he turned out in the lane and just hit the gas. And he said it was terrifying because he didn't know we were on this hill. We couldn't see over the hill. We didn't know if someone was going to be bombing down the hill, coming back into the neighborhood, trying to get to their house. And luckily there wasn't, and we looked behind us in the rearview mirror and just all the people started pouring into the open lane behind us.
And when we got up to the top of Edgewood, the cars up here were just slowly, merging on one at a time, taking their time, waiting for someone to give them an opening. And while it's real nice to be polite, they didn't realize how close the fire was back here. And so we just cut in, started telling people, make 3 lanes on Pearson, it's wide enough.
I started knocking on people's doors and I was like, "You gotta make a 3rd lane. You gotta get people out of here." And they all started squeezing together, and we just kept going up cars and beating on doors. And I would tell people, "Roll your window down," and I would say, "We gotta make a 3rd lane." I said, "Edgewood Lane is on fire. We have to get people off of Edgewood."
What did you think about the way your parents acted on that day?
They felt like heroes basically to me, and I felt I just felt better that we were gonna get more people out, and yeah, they just felt like heroes and that we had a chance at surviving this, which I didn't think before.
It took us an hour and a half to get from our house to outside of Paradise, which is only about 3 miles. And I can't imagine for the people that were in there all day and the people that never even made it out, so.
Well, here's our house. Everything around us is on fire. Oh, man, this is bad. I know can't really see very well. Oh man, this is bad. There goes our house. It's all engulfed now. Well, I don't know what to say. Just thought I would video this in case the last time some of you guys see me. I've had It's kind of a weird feeling when you honestly think you're gonna die. A little update, I guess. Everything's exploded on this house. I had only initially taken the video because there was one time in particular where I could hear the explosions and animals were running into me, and I really thought I was going to die. I mean, I thought it was a really bad decision to stay up there, and I figured if I made the video that Lori would see it. I don't know, it's kind of silly when I say it, but a buddy of mine, Tom, he had dropped off a day or two before this little 4x6 trailer, and it was full of sod. And when that one time when the explosions were loud, it got dark, and I really thought that, man, this is it. I'm gone. I rolled out that sod. In here, got this little sod house right here, small hose. Keep water in it, I guess. Someplace to go. And so I just wet down the sod, and I'd wet down underneath of it. And I figured I would jump underneath there and it would buy me about 15 minutes. I said a prayer and I figured, well, if God wants me to die, it's my time. But apparently it wasn't my time then. I'm still here. In God's hands now. That's all the power I need. We can always replace this material stuff, but you can't replace you. Amen.
We started our evacuation at 7:45 in the morning, and I made it to Chico around 2:30. Met up with my daughter's mom and my stepmom and my girlfriend at the Raley's parking lot. And we still hadn't heard from my dad and my uncle. And I didn't see how they could have made it out if they left after I did. I thought they had possibly died to come save my travel trailer. So that was very heavy on my mind until about an hour and a half later, they finally made it down to Chico and were able to give me a call and let me know they were safe.
We got separated. That was the toughest part. Was I in this big box van weaseled through and got down to Chico, where we had talked that we were going to meet, and my wife wasn't there. I'm walking back and forth, like at the bottom of the hill, looking for her, like freaking out, pissed off at myself. It was incredibly emotional, incredibly heart-wrenching, and just thinking that I had left her, and so it worked out okay. We found each other a couple hours later.
So after about 2:30, was when they were able to start flowing people out of the temporary refuge areas. Between 2:30 and 3:30, I'll say the town pretty much cleared out. So from then on, I was just checking on what was left and what was gone. I remember the first time I gave them the answer to how much do you think is gone, and I said 80%. I'm sure that was their oh shit moment, because they hadn't been there, right? They hadn't seen it. And they're going, and you can hear in their voice going, how much? And I said, I think 80%'s gone. And that was, you know, the reality of it. It got worse, actually.
The operation to locate people who perished in the fire, all told, when it was all said and done, we used about 10,000 people from agencies throughout California as well as 5 states. They searched 18,000 locations. Some of those locations were searched twice. We used coroner's investigators and law enforcement officers and National Guard, search and rescue, urban search and rescue, firefighters, forensic anthropologists, cadaver dogs, all of those resources were brought together. And as it stands today, it looks like 85 individuals perished in the fire. And I certainly don't want to discount or lessen the traumatic impact of that fact, but it does stand in stark contrast to the number of people that had to be evacuated. I mean, I think the estimate is some 46,000 people were evacuated out of the area. And the fact that the fatality is 85, when you consider how much worse it could have been, is remarkable.
As bad as it was, and as how terrible it is to lose 85 lives, that's hard to use the term successful, because I wouldn't say it was successful, but it was, let's just say, it was probably better than most people anticipated that day, knowing how many people lived up there and how bad it was. Because I remember sitting here a couple of days after the fire thinking there's going to be at least 2,000 to 3,000 dead in this whole thing.
I also thought that that thousands of people were dead, because I thought once I got to that flame that everything behind me was burning. That's what I thought, and all these cars behind me.
Just knowing how the fire was coming this way, I thought it was going to engulf just every car on Pearson that was behind us. I'm really legitimately shocked that more people didn't die.
I'm absolutely amazed that the fatality rate is as low as it is. It is sad that we lost people, absolutely.
As of 1 year after the Camp Fire, here's what we know. It is the deadliest and most destructive fire in the recorded history of California so far. It immediately claimed 85 lives and is responsible for taking at least several more since. It burned over 153,000 acres and destroyed 18,800 structures, including 14,000 homes and more than 500 businesses. The fire started on November 8th and was not formally extinguished until November 25th, more than 2 weeks later. The cause of the fire was a spark, cast down to the dry earth from a poorly maintained electric transmission line belonging to California power giant PG&E. But in the days immediately following the fire, we knew none of this. The people of Paradise didn't know the full extent of the damage, and not being allowed to return to their town, they pored over their computers and their phones for any news or status updates of their home, their neighborhood, their beloved community.
Honestly, I'm not even sure what day it was. Maybe it might have been day 3. it seemed an eternity, but I got a photograph of my property, and boy, you know, you just kind of drop to your knees.
It seemed like an eternal waiting period, because even once we knew the status of the house, and even once we had a photograph of that, of course we were very eager, like many, I would say not everyone, but many people, so eager to get up there. And part of that is the hope that amongst the rubble you'll find something.
I went up on Saturday after the fire with CAL FIRE, and I knew it was bad from what I had heard and what have you, but I really didn't expect the level of devastation that there was. Driving through, it was like a total war zone.
I lost everything. Everything I had of my mom. Everything from the day my kids was born, the day we were married, everything. When I went back up there, I broke down because it looked so terrible. You know, all the burning, it was so bad. It was nothing left, nothing.
You know what's crazy is, to be fully honest, it didn't occur to me until 2 days after the fire. I couldn't even process everything. You know, I wasn't even thinking about. And then one of my friends said, "Oh man, I'm so glad I grabbed my kids' baby books." And the second she said that, I just fell apart and realized how much I had lost.
We had hazmat suits and masks and gloves and booties and goggles, and, you know, tried to be as prepared as we could. It was, as they said, very hazardous. I mean, shards of metal and glass and muck because it had rained.
I was able to take my camera into Paradise about a week before the town reopened to the public, and this is video I took with my cell phone as I approached my mother's home for the first time. I can tell you firsthand, your brain doesn't really know what to do. Mine felt like it was backfiring, sputtering, trying to load. I couldn't even really feel sad about what I was seeing because it didn't feel like reality. This couldn't be real. It's a mistake. Someone is playing a trick on me. This does not compute. In the days following, I was able to help my mom dig through the ashes of what were once our things. And as I would look at my mom, I would wonder, what's going to happen to her? Where's she gonna go?
Hold on, hold on. We're gonna go this way. We're gonna go this way. Yeah, good girl. Do you wanna go see Jim? Just a minute, just a minute, just a minute. Okay, go. Oh, she's so excited. And she's so good. She's so good. She just comes even off leash, you know, which we never do. Hello, go see him, go see him. Yes, there he is. There he is. We have lived in a hotel of one sort or another since November 9th. And today is March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So longer, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say longer than we thought, but who knew what to think? Nobody knew what to think. If I stand in a central location, I can show you the kitchen. And I can show you the dining area. And the great room, living room, family room, den, dog place. This is the office. The secret to the office is there are lots of things underneath the table, like a big box with all the FEMA papers and all the binders with the insurance info. And on top of the office, you can see house plans that are hopefully going to be in the works soon. So that's our next big step. So when we were originally displaced, we were in a motel room, which we were over the moon thankful to have. We were there for 2 months. And then we moved here at the Residence Inn. So we have this whole living area and the bedroom, bathroom. It's 504 square feet and it feels like a mansion. We have just been so lucky.
Under ordinary circumstances, it may seem strange to consider being forced to live in a hotel room for 5 months as lucky. But these aren't ordinary circumstances, and my mother was incredibly lucky. For many others, housing, temporary or otherwise, was far less certain. Many, like my uncle, were forced to live in their cars, or in tent cities that sprang up in the parking lots of Chico businesses. Some, like Dorothy and Dawn and their large extended family, were able to stay with relatives in the surrounding areas.
We have approximately 100 plus family members that lived in Paradise, and our family alone, 22 homes were burned and lost. 22 families.
So we've opened up our house after the fire, and we had, out of the 22 families that lost their homes, we had 11 of the families living here at one point, and some 45 people.
As the months go by, these shell-shocked residents struggle to find some degree of normalcy, which is exceedingly difficult when nearly everything you've ever known has disappeared, even those things you once thought indomitable.
Hey, bring it up, you guys! Guys, get on a knee. Here we go, on a knee, let's go. We're gonna get in 6 teams. We're gonna have 3 games going on. This is Ev Duran. He is a graduate of Paradise High School, and he's doing a documentary on the campfire, and we're gonna be a part of that, okay?
The campfire struck Paradise one day before the high school football playoffs were set to begin, and PHS football, with its players and coaches scattered and homeless, was forced to forfeit their season. Now, like the entire town, they face an uncertain future, both as a school and as a team.
Numbers-wise, we're about half the size our school is, and that's the same with football players on campus. A lot of adjustments every day, a lot of change.
You're not playing tackle. They always say that.
You guys are on film, you bunch of mountain boys.
We have a home game August 23rd, and I think about it every day right now. And I know our kids do, and our football team does.
Despite having their first game back at PHS on the schedule, there is no guarantee that the campus will be ready.
The kids have to be safe to be able to go up there. So the trees, the water, the soil sampling, things like that, has to be deemed safe. The goal for the school is to have graduation up there this year. So if they get graduation up there, I'll breathe a sigh of relief.
This is our old home. This is a business my wife and I started, Custom Made CrossFit. It's weird to be back. We haven't been here for a while. We came right after the fire, but now, what's it been?
We had a bunch of house stuff in our attic, like all of our house possessions up in our attic. And so like one little coffee mug we found made it.
Oh, there's another one right there.
That's the coffee mug.
Oh.
That's it.
Yeah.
For too many residents of Paradise, like the Delgados and Jeffrey Greitzer, they didn't just lose their homes. They lost their businesses, their jobs, their financial security. But yes, also their houses. Imagine you woke up tomorrow and you didn't have a house and you didn't have a job. What would you do? It's almost unfathomable, but that's what these people are living through every single day.
We have been incredibly lucky, blessed. compared to some other people around here. We had insurance and we had, we ended up finding a place, but there's a lot of people that didn't. That's really tough, really, really tough. The hardest thing was, or is this was ultimately going to be retirement. I just finished paying off this entire building, land and everything.
This would be the entrance to the front of the building. The first part, as you walked in, you would get the full experience of chocolate. You would come into the store, get that heavenly aroma of chocolate.
Just like Jeffrey Greitzer, Pam and Bill Hartley owned and operated a quintessential Paradise business, Joy Lynn's Candies. This iconic candy shop was known to collect international awards for their sweets, all of which were manufactured here at this location.
As you guys stand here right now, I know this has to still be a little surreal.
Yeah.
How long, since the fire, has it taken you to get to a point where you can, and maybe it's still not here, but where you can be here and not just be overcome?
Yeah, you go there a little bit, but then you can't spend a lot of time there, at least for me, and so I'll pop my brain back out of it, and visit it. Like now I'm visiting it, thinking, and then can't talk.
And I was saying that as we drove up today. I said, it's a little easier with every trip into town as we drive through this devastation to get a little more accustomed to it, because now we're seeing things cleared off.
Right.
Now we're seeing good things happening. And so some of the ugliness is all disappearing, and we're transitioning to another phase.
Right.
So it's a little bit easier, but we do have those moments, that crying time where you just realize how quickly life changes. You're upside down in a couple of hours, and it's hard to sometimes go back and reflect on that. You want to try and keep your mind in a positive mode and say, what can we do now to help this town rebuild and make it a better place than it was? How can we be a part of that? And let's get active in doing that, and then that keeps us in a positive frame of mind, and we're able to deal with this a lot better.
Pam and Bill have already picked out a new location and are rebuilding Joy Lynn's in Paradise. As the town continues its attempt to recover, the people who are probably happiest about every announced rebuild are the folks who didn't have to themselves. Almost everyone in Paradise lost their homes. What about the people who didn't?
What frustrates me is people say Paradise was wiped off the map. No, it was not wiped off the map. I'm still here. And a lot of people are still here. And
it's still
Paradise
here. It still exists.
Paradise is my home. And so, it's like, no, we're not off the map. We're here. We're clinging to the map, and we'll continue to cling.
For these people clinging to the map, whose homes didn't burn, it's a uniquely confusing situation that they find themselves in, filled with a lot of conflicting emotions.
It was hard for us, like, oh, that's great. And we didn't share it with a lot of people because we did have, kind of that survivor's guilt. It took us a while to really decide. A lot of people were like, hey, you guys need to just clean your house up because it was smoke damaged and just get back up there. And it's like, well, there's no water. We didn't get power for
a long time.
A long time, so how are you going to start repairing a house?
It's very strange being homeless. It's really to know you do not have anything to go back to, but it's pretty final. And I feel worse for people that have the houses standing. I think that's a much worse situation to be in. You can't re-inhabit them right now. They need to be repaired, and you're in limbo.
This finality that Savannah speaks of can be a valuable thing for folks like her and my mom, who lost their homes and all their possessions, but were fortunate enough to have good insurance. They get to decide how they move forward. They have that choice. Rebuild, buy nearby, or buy far away and start completely over. But if you didn't lose your home, imagine that reality. What if overnight your home was dropped into the middle of an unrecognizable landscape, far removed from the community you loved, and everything around you appears toxic and dangerous? It's hard to imagine. Burned or spared, there are no winners here.
It's been tough. It's been a battle financially with insurance. They don't want to pay for things that they should. And so that's been really hard. And then just the whole, like the first week for me was really hard. It was just, it sunk in and was like, this is our new reality. Every window I look out, it's a war zone.
Every day you're like, you just can't believe it. You think it's got to get better, like it's easier, but it doesn't.
There's no family anymore around. There's no neighbors. There's no friends. A hospital if something happens, you know? So that's been tough.
You know, and the decisions kind of made for you, you know, when, you know, our home survived. Whether we would have been better off if it had burnt, maybe.
You know, there's thoughts actually at times. It was like, you know what, make it easier if it was gone. That's what I kept thinking because, you know, she kept telling me, she's like, I can't go back. There's no way. And, you know, there's still thoughts, you know, but we're so tied to the community. This is where our life has been. So how do you leave it?
We'll never understand what it feels like to have our home burned to the ground. We'll never know that pain. And I feel awful for everyone that went through that, almost everyone I know. And those people will never know what it's like to live here while the town tries to come back.
Paradise is coming back, but with a tragedy this monumental, the challenges facing these resilient people are unprecedented and far from over.
We try to focus on the positive, you know, like looking at, we lost trees, but we gained views, or, you know, we lost this, but we're gonna gain this. And it's like, you can focus on the positive all you want, but at the same time, you're still living in like a destruction zone and you have to see it. We don't ever get to have like our normal daily life back.
The longer people are out of the area, the more they settle into their new life and their new house, their new rental, they get into that mode and they may not come back.
You know, even if 50% come back, is the town going to be solvent? Will it be able to sustain? Are we going to have the services? A lot of things that they don't have the answers. They don't know.
And not having the hospital now and not sure what they're doing, that was a big factor into Paradise's income and the schools. So that's, I don't know what's going to come of all that.
You do have to do some different things in terms of how you build the town, but you don't want to do things that make it so expensive and so difficult that people who want to come home just don't because they can't.
Most of the problem with the hitches we have is the enormity of this disaster and the uniqueness of it. We've not really seen a fire as huge as this is, where it's basically almost burned out an entire culture.
The federal government and the state, yeah, they'll help for a short time, but what happens at the end of that? So there's a lot of uncertainty still moving forward.
In the midst of this uncertainty, another challenge arises: how to address the scars that hide just beneath the surface.
It's very difficult to put that and then losing everything you have. And then now you're on top of that, you're thinking about finances. Well, where do you live? I'm still homeless 5 months later. You know, that's nobody's fault but my own. But still, all this wrapped up together, and, it goes like this. Emotions go up and down. Yeah, there's post-traumatic stress with it, absolutely. And it's going to continue because there's a lot of uncertainty still going on.
While interviewing people for this film, I heard the phrase post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, quite frequently, and understandably so. I wanted to speak to someone who could offer valuable insight on the subject, and maybe recommendations on how to work through it. Fortunately, I was able to find Dr. Stephen Thorpe, who is not just a Paradise High School graduate, but also an expert in the field of PTSD. And yes, this is Paradise, so obviously, he's my cousin.
PTSD is from a traumatic event, which almost always is a life or death situation. So it's either a serious injury or a risk of death, or the witnessing of death or serious injury. One of the most common symptoms is what we call hypervigilance, which is the sense of being on guard all the time after a traumatic event. And that's very common in people with PTSD. And so they're more edgy, they're more alert. The people that I treat that have PTSD, when they walk into a building, can't just walk into a building and relax in that room. They walk into the building and they're immediately searching for exits. They're immediately scanning the people in the room to see if the people are dangerous or if they have weapons. And so they can never truly relax. Not being able to stop thinking about the traumatic event and yet not wanting to think about it. So having these unwanted memories come into mind is common. Being worried about any stressors or what we call triggers. So these are reminders of the event. And so that's also very common with PTSD, that they will avoid anything that reminds them. And the consequence is that their world kind of gets smaller and smaller, sometimes ultimately so that they can't leave the house anymore. And so that's how we help people, is kind of encouraging them to get back out into the world even though it feels uncomfortable in the short term. One thing that we know is that people, ironically, that do their best to avoid anything to do with that memory or anything to do with that situation are the people who are most likely to get PTSD. So some people who survive the fires don't want to think about it, don't want to talk about it, don't want to go back up to paradise, understandably, but that actually might make them more susceptible. Now, anybody who goes through a really serious traumatic event is going to have some symptoms from that, even if they don't have full PTSD. On the good side, as you're talking about, people went through this as a group, and the upside of that is that they can support one another afterwards. And one of the best predictors we have for people being resilient to developing PTSD is social support. It's one of the strongest predictors of not getting PTSD.
Many victims of the Camp Fire have found strength and solace in each other, aided by the largely unwavering social support of neighboring communities.
And the surrounding community support was really amazing. I mean, just all the free meals, free clothing, so many donations that they literally had to send donations back.
If you go anywhere, if you talk to anyone that's not here, they know what paradise is, and they have such empathy and they have such compassion. People have given so much, I just can't even believe it.
The people around here keep finding ways to help each other out. I'm just so proud of them and their resourcefulness, the way they put things aside, and they bring too much, you know. They're having to turn stuff away until later need, and the need, you know, it isn't just a 1 day, 1 week, 1 month need as we see.
We had a Thanksgiving with probably 60 people here, and they all, and in the community, local and extended community, brought every bit of it. So it's been really nice to see that people will come together when it counts.
We had a couple of big truckloads of stuff come up from Vacaville. Everything, just about all the clothes that I have, all I had was what I had on, and he's got more clothes than he's ever had at one time.
Seems that way. It just is mind-blowing to me, the level of support, not only locally, but globally.
As the story of Paradise began to spread far and wide, our little town grew internationally famous, and the generous spirit of total strangers from around the world became the silver lining of this terrible tragedy. The PHS baseball team was invited to play a game on the same field as the San Francisco Giants. The basketball teams were invited to watch the Golden State Warriors up close. And PHS football got an experience they'll never forget while visiting the San Francisco 49ers. These are but a few of the examples of love that was shared with Paradise.
Rotary clubs all over the United States are sending money, and it's just very encouraging, and it makes you feel really good about people.
It restores your faith in humanity. It's wonderful, the support that we've gotten, not just locally with things like our chamber, pretty much taking in any business that wants to join now, not even charging them, and doing this Ridge Rising campaign that's fabulous, to Chico providing us with offices for 3 months, I think, To the ladies in Ireland who heard me on the news saying I really was so sad that I lost all my recipes, and they sent me 4 cookbooks. It's just all over the world.
There's one more example of the widespread generosity that the mayor speaks of that I'd like to share with you. He's a man named Bob Wilson. Like most people prior to the campfire, Bob had never even heard of Paradise. You remember him from earlier?
I knew nothing about Paradise. As a matter of fact, I had to look it up on a map.
When I visited Bob at his beautiful home in Southern California, I discovered that he is a prolific collector of firefighter-related keepsakes and memorabilia, which seems appropriate since he is now a hero to countless victims of fire.
I was reading the paper one morning and there was an article. This was a whole article about what these high school kids would be missing as a result of the fire and not being able to go back to Paradise High School. For me, I got so much out of high school. I really thought about these kids and the fact that they were missing this particular episode in their life. That's what prompted me to want to do something. I've always contended, that good intentions, unless acted upon, are just good intentions. So I decided I would act on this, and I decided to write a letter to the kids. Then I thought, gee, I better put some substance behind it. And the more I thought about it, I said, I know what I'll do. I'll just write a check for $1,000 to each one, 980 kids.
Yeah, you didn't mishear that. 980 kids times 1,000. He also wrote checks to each of the 105 staff members at PHS. That's almost $1.1 million given to people in a town he had no prior connection to. What'd I say? Hero.
If you were invited back up for once Paradise High School reopens,
right,
would that be a trip that you would consider making?
Well, as a matter of fact, I got a call from the superintendent of schools. She said, we want you at the graduation. And I had replied to her, look, even if you hadn't invited me, I would have been at your graduation.
As you can see, with the help of countless volunteers from the community, the school district was able to make the campus safe and secure enough to host the Paradise High School graduation. The event drew a large crowd, eager to celebrate the accomplishments of these young people and the continuing accomplishments of the town.
Hey buddy, how you been, man? Okay, so, yeah, absolutely. I got this. This has got to be the only picture of the cop you've got. Hey, it's good seeing you. I'm glad you're doing well.
The reality of what has happened to us is that we will grieve forever. We will not get over the loss of our community, but we will learn to live with it. We will heal and we will rebuild ourselves around the loss we have suffered.
We will always carry a piece of PHS with us, a memory of where we came from and what we overcame as we take off on our next great adventures.
Seniors, this is your night. You are the ones to be commended for staying the course despite the adversity that overtook our community.
You are the first generation of Paradise High School graduates to rise from the ashes of what life was and take a bold step forward into a new future.
It is with great honor that we present the Paradise High School graduating class of 2019. You may now move your tassels to the left side of the car. Congratulations.
Ben?
Ben.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Can we do a picture?
Oh, I'd love to do a picture. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How was graduation? It was the best. It was absolutely the best.
Don't look at us.
Don't look at us.
Where do you think we are as a town? What looking back at what happened and sort of looking forward as well, what have you learned? What has the town learned?
Well, I'm actually glad this happened, that I'm able to talk to you today, because last night you and I were both at the high school graduation, Paradise High School. And that gave me great hope. When I heard the words from the student speakers, it was powerful. And it was the words that, you know, there's a bunch of people in this town that are working every day to bring back our community. They're out there grinding every day, and they're making a difference. You know, because of that spirit I saw last night, and because of that spirit of these people that I know that are working with the town, working with the county, working with fellow residents to make it happen, I have great faith in the resilience of the community. We're going to rebuild. You know, hopefully in the long run we can make it an even better place than it was before, but we have a long road. This is a marathon, not a sprint, but we have the people here that can make that happen. And I truly believe in the spirit of this community. Paradise Strong has been said a lot, but the spirit of this community is a depth that I don't think we'll reach the bottom of.
Now we're at the point where all of these things that you never thought would be impacted by this fire have been impacted, and life is just so much more complicated. It sounds cliche to say that the world changed, but the world changed when Paradise and Magalia and Concow and all those other communities that were, you know, burned through, come back. I know they'll come back eventually, but it won't be the same. There's just no way it can be the same. But that's not to say that what we have or what we will be able to do won't be great in its own right.
People come here, they don't really want to leave. Even having lost their home, even not knowing how certain the future might be, they want to be in Paradise. They're going to work that out here, not somewhere else. And I really admire that spirit and that love of Paradise.
I want to see my family remain in Paradise, and I want to watch Paradise rebuild.
Life is always in flux. It always changes. And what you do with that defines who you are as a person. We've reinvented ourselves down here in Chico until we can get back up into Paradise, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
It'll be the things that attracted us here in the first place, or they'll be back. You know, the slower pace of life, the friendliness, all the volunteerism in this community. It's tons of people getting involved and making this community a better place, and all those things will be remembered, and it'll be a driving force to bring people back. They're going to want that again.
We're pioneers. We're starting all over. You know, just like some of the names you'd see down at the museum, you know, that were the first ones to come up. That's us. It's our time. That's why we need to engage. We need to be involved, and you need to love on your community and the people that are here.
Paradise is a very resilient and strong town, and there's a lot that don't want to leave that hill, and they're going to do whatever they have to be able to rebuild and live there again.
And I always kind of approach things from here because I'm trying to envision how is it going to be to walk into the house. So here's the beginnings of the new house. But here's the thing that just I love. In the old backyard, we had a lawn, deck, and kind of a walkway Jim and I had put in. And at this end of it, we had this small grove of bamboo. So here's the bamboo. bamboo. It's like it's been through fire, construction, bulldozers. I mean, the lot's been scraped clean, soil compacted. And here's this dang bamboo coming up, and I check on it every time because I just feel like, oh my gosh, you know, it survived.
Is there anything else I didn't ask you? Did I miss anything that you want to say?
No, I don't think so.
Nobody ever says yes. No, to that last question. Nobody goes, yeah, I got more stuff.
No, I'm good.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, I think you covered it.
Is there anything else you guys want to add that I didn't ask you? Anything you want people to know?
That I do believe that there are people that, and I know actually that there are people who have struggled way harder, and that I would like to help them, and that we're just one of many people who have survived, and our story was about just like the average of anybody could have been in our shoes, even though we were really close, and a lot of people went through what we went through, but there are some people who went through harder things, and I think that they should I want to help them.
Wait, you know I didn't forget about the football team?
Hey, it's called nerves. Because you've been pissed off for 10 months. Now you get to take it out. Everybody heal tonight. Play football. Get down there. You have a crowd that loves you, and you're going to be inspired by it. And you're all going to be healed right now by getting down there and kicking some butt. Are you ready? Let's go! Right here, baby. We win as brothers. We lose as brothers. Let's get it done. Hey, brothers to the bone on 3. 1, 2, 3. Brothers to the bone! Woo!
Lucas Harley, touchdown, Paradise.